Time now to discuss the day's top stories. Joining me are Liberal MP Andrew Wallace and Labor MP Alicia Payne. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining me. Let's get straight into it. A surprise announcement of sorts today from the New South Wales Premier that as of Monday, the 11 a.m. press conference will not be daily. It will be on a need-to-know basis. Alicia, do you think this is too soon?
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly concerning that on the day that New South Wales have announced a record number of cases, 9 deaths and 89 people on ventilators, this is a day that the Premier decides she no longer needs to front up to journalists each day and to the community to let them know of the evolving situation. And I think it's very concerning. The government, New South Wales government, needs to be held accountable at this time. At a time when they're talking about opening up, they're also not letting their parliament sit in spite of calls from New South Wales Labor, and I think it's very concerning.
Andrew, how are journalists supposed to keep the state government to account if it can't ask questions during what is a very crucial time for the state? Okay, I think we've just lost Andrew. We'll continue with our conversation, Alicia, and I'll ask you that. You mentioned that Parliament's not sitting. That's one factor, but we are expected to see cases peak in New South Wales over the coming weeks. How can the state government be held to account?
Yeah, I must say I think it's an incredibly cynical move by the Premier to be moving the conversation when there really is a crisis unfolding in New South Wales at the moment. As I said, record case numbers of people in hospital and ICU, outbreaks in regional areas where health services are very unlikely to be able to cope, that this is a time when she's trying to change the focus to talking about opening up when it's clearly not ready. I mean, it'll be at least a month before they get to that level of vaccination anyway, but we're seeing huge numbers, over 1,500 people with COVID today. And, she's being backed in by a Prime Minister who's fear-mongering to WA and Queensland about getting ready. And also, Gladys's language around other states need to catch up. Well, I hope that those states never catch up to the level of COVID and, the disaster that's happening in New South Wales right now. It's very, very scary.
Well, fingers crossed that's what the vaccination pathway forward hopefully certainly prevents. I believe we've got Andrew with us now. Andrew, we've just been discussing how the 11 a.m. press conference in New South Wales will no longer be daily. How are journalists supposed to keep the state government to account when cases haven't even peaked yet?
Well, I think it's important that we understand as a nation that we need to stop focusing specifically on the number of cases. As we roll the number of vaccinations out to get to that 70 and 80%, the number of people who are coming down with COVID is less important. We need to be looking at figures like those people who are hospitalised and sadly those people who pass away as a result of COVID. But the number of people who contract COVID is less important as we increase those number of vaccinations. So that's what we need to concentrate on. It's very important that the community is kept up to date with what's happening, and I'm sure that the New South Wales government will do that. As for Alicia's comment about the Prime Minister scaremongering, that is absolute rubbish. I mean, we've been working through this for now 18 months, and the only organisation that is scaremongering is the Australian Labor Party, led by Anthony Albanese. So it's a bit rich for Alicia to be saying what she said about the Prime Minister. It's fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, no, I completely reject that, Andrew.
Well,
and the Prime Minister has said what you have just said. The Prime Minister has said that the number of people hospitalised and in ICU should be what you're focusing on. And of course, that is something that premiers announce each day in these press conferences. And in New South Wales today, we had 9 people tragically pass away. We've got 207 people in ICU and 89 people on ventilators. So I think those figures are very concerning, wouldn't you agree? And that is not a time for the Premier to be backing away from accountability.
Alicia, at what point, though, when we do reach a vaccine threshold of, say, 80% across the board, isn't that time to start thinking about reopening it, particularly ahead of Christmas?
Well, of course, we all want to reopen as soon as we can, but I think a time where we've had actually record numbers of cases today, a record number of cases, I think that is a very poor time to decide that you don't need to be answering questions about where we're going. The community are really concerned.
Alicia,
Obviously, we need to be working
to
towards opening up, but now is the time to focus on getting the health system, making sure our health systems can cope with this, making sure people are getting vaccinated. And it's a time to be, making sure people feel that things are under control, that their premiers, that their politicians are working to get these things done.
Once again, though, Alicia, you're continuing to rabbit the ALP talking points where all you want to talk about is the fear of this, because you want to drive fear into the hearts of Australians, and that's, quite frankly, that's disgraceful. I mean,
I don't want to drive fear into the hearts of Australians. I would question what the Prime Minister.
Labor Party are doing. That is exactly what the Labor Party is doing. You've had a good go, Alicia. All right, back to you, Danica.
All right, I want to move on now because we've got another interesting topic to discuss. This week, Christina Keneally confirmed that she will nominate for the safe Labor Western Sydney seat of Fowler. Alicia, I'll start with you. Do you support her being pre-selected for Fowler? And what do you say to critics who believe that this wasn't a diverse pick?
I just want to start by saying that Christina obviously makes an incredible contribution to our parliament as a shadow minister and as our deputy leader in the Senate. And should she be pre-selected and elected to the House of Representatives, I would really look forward to working with her in that regard as a member of the House. And, the Senate's loss will be the House's gain. But I would say that that process has not been finalised yet, and that really is a matter for New South Wales Labor.
Andrew, what do you make of Christina Keneally's shift to the lower house?
Well, look, full points to Alicia, who's trying her best to make out as though it's not a fait accompli. I suppose the first thing I'd want to point out is, look, Chris Hayes has been a good member of the Labor Party. He's a good man. Chris Hayes is in fact a terrific bloke, and the Parliament will miss him. But Chris is one of the dying breed of Labor Party members, one of the old guard, the rear guard, who actually understands what Labor used to stand for once upon a time, and that's really looking after working people. Modern day Labor have totally lost their way. And really, this demonstrates what we're seeing with Christina Keneally today, and also with Lay, is that that the Labor Party are all about backroom deals. I mean, Lay was the front runner for this. She's a local in the area of Fowler. She's the daughter of Vietnamese refugees. Chris Hayes supported her, and then because Christina Keneally wasn't going to win her preferred Senate spot because Deb O'Neill was going to beat her, she's just been parachuted in. And I think it's disgraceful, and it really demonstrates just how undemocratic, absolutely how undemocratic the Labor Party is, and it continues just to do these backroom deals. I think it's very sad.
Alicia, do you think that this wasn't a diverse pick?
Look, it's really interesting to hear Andrew's reflections on the Labor Party. Thanks for that, Andrew. But I would say that I'd like to just take the opportunity to acknowledge what a fantastic member Chris Hayes has been, and the pastoral role that he has performed as our whip, and how helpful he's been to me as a new member and to all of us, I know, and he'll be very much missed. As I did say, these are matters for New South Wales Labor, and I absolutely do think we do need to do more to get more diverse people into the Parliament and into our caucus. And also, just to say that I'm very proud in ACT branch to be one of the most democratic Labor branches in the country, where we do have full rank and file pre-selections at each time.
Doesn't work too well for Fowler, Alicia.
Well, I do, yes, I did say that these are a matter for New South Wales Labor.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. We've run out of time once again for a Friday. Andrew Wallace, Alicia Payne, great
Thanks,
to chat.
Danica.
Thank you.
Thanks,
We'll talk to you
Alicia.
next week.
Have a good